Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we examine a dramatic narrative shaping U.S. foreign policy and global economic tension. Iran and Venezuela defy Washington as the U.S. faces deep fiscal strains. Over recent years, the U.S. has leaned heavily on financial power, sanctions, dollar dominance, debt leverage as tools of foreign policy, but with mounting debt, constrained fiscal flexibility, and domestic pressures intensifying, questions are emerging about how far Washington can push. Meanwhile, allies of the U.S. are testing those limits. Among the most striking cases, Iran and Venezuela, two states long under American economic pressure, now pushing back in ways that highlight deeper shifts in global power. In this deep dive, we'll explore how Iran and Venezuela are defying U.S. constraints, how Washington's fiscal challenges undermine its leverage, and what the consequences may be for global order. Let's begin with Venezuela. Once a wealthy oil exporter, Venezuela has been battered by mismanagement, hyperinflation, sanctions, and capital flight. Sanctions, especially on its oil sector, have choked foreign revenues and investment key lifelines for the regime of President Nicolas Maduro. Yet despite the pressure, Venezuela continues to resist. It seeks to preserve sovereignty, maintain alliances, and tap alternative financing mechanisms. In recent years, Iran and Venezuela have deepened cooperation, especially in energy. Venezuela, facing chronic fuel shortages and refinery breakdowns, has imported Iranian gasoline and technical expertise. In return, Venezuela has supplied crude oil for swap arrangements, or provided access to its deteriorating refinery infrastructure. Reuters +2, Wikipedia +2, but even those barter-based models are straining. Venezuela is running out of cash as sanctions and structural collapse constrain its ability to pay, maintain infrastructure, or import parts. Al Jazeera +1, the model depends heavily on barter, in-kind exchanges, or sidestepping traditional financial systems. Iran, on the other hand, has long faced the brunt of U.S. sanctions. Its oil export revenues are constrained. Access to SWIFT and global banking channels are limited. Foreign investment is risky, and its economy is devalued by inflation. But Tehran has adapted. It employs shadow banking, barter, local currency trade, petro-for-good swaps, and clandestine financial networks. One telling example: China, Iran's biggest oil customer, purportedly pays for Iranian oil not through conventional dollar transfers, but via a barter-type arrangement where Chinese firms build infrastructure in Iran, and payments are settled outside the international banking system. The Wall Street Journal. Such systems help Iran sustain revenue flows, even under U.S. financial pressure. These tactics reflect a broader tactic: reduce reliance on Western financial choke points, diversify trading partners, and develop parallel systems. Now, overlay this with the United States' own fiscal and political challenges. The U.S. government carries more than $30 trillion in public debt, increasing interest obligations, and ballooning deficits. Domestic demands, social spending, infrastructure, defense, strain the budget further. During periods when Congress delays or cliffs loom, the U.S. sometimes struggles to make full payments, risking default or shutdowns. This domestic vulnerability chips away at the moral and economic leverage behind U.S. sanctions tools. If Washington itself is constrained, can it credibly threaten states with financial exclusion or punitive measures? Opponents will be less intimidated. Moreover, as more countries, especially rising powers, develop alternatives to the U.S. dollar and create trade settlements in local currencies, the grip of American financial power loosens. Countries like Iran, Russia, China, and Venezuela are pushing toward multipolar systems of finance that bypass U.S. hegemony. The combination is dangerous from Washington's perspective. If regimes under U.S. pressure can defy sanctions, find workarounds, and maintain alliances, then U.S. coercive diplomacy becomes less effective. Look at Iran and Venezuela's relationship. It is a clear example of resistance to U.S. pressure. Venezuela's oil industry is crippled, but in alliance with Iran, it can sustain some operations through swaps, technical help, and energy imports. Venezuela also seeks to renegotiate, reforge pipelines of trade, and avoid full dependence on the U.S.-dominated system. Reuters +1. In turn, Iran supplies Venezuela with fuel, technical support, and diplomatic backing. This cooperation allows both countries to resist external pressure more effectively than if they stood alone. Yet this defiance has costs. Barter systems are inefficient. Infrastructure degradation accelerates. Shortages persist. These regimes still suffer under the weight of scarcity, public discontent, and international isolation. Their sovereignty is defended at the price of economic hardship. From the U.S. side, responses include tightening enforcement, imposing secondary sanctions, partnering with allies, and using political pressure. Indeed, U.S. sanctions enforcement via OFAC remains active, targeting companies that aid Iranian or Venezuelan schemes. Fully hogue, but as sanctions intensify, more creative workarounds emerge, making enforcement a game of cat and mouse. So, what does this mean for global dynamics? First, we may see a gradual erosion of U.S. financial dominance. Nations will continue to build alternative clearinghouses, use bilateral currency swaps, or develop regional trade blocs that sidestep dollar dependency. Second, alliances of sanction-resistant states may coalesce. Iran and Venezuela's cooperation could inspire similar pacts where states pool technologies, trade, and diplomatic support to withstand pressure from major powers. Third, U.S. foreign policy may need recalibration. Coercive sanctions may not suffice alone. Washington may have to combine diplomacy, incentives, targeted engagement, and multilateral arrangements, especially as traditional leverage weakens. Finally, ordinary citizens in these countries pay much of the cost. Sanctions can worsen inflation, scarcity, unemployment, and poverty. The ability of regimes to resist external pressure often depends on suppressing dissent or redirecting blame. The humanitarian dimension cannot be ignored. To wrap up, Iran and Venezuela's defiance is more than symbolic. It reflects a broader shift, the fragmentation of a U.S.-dominated global financial order, the rise of alternative networks, and growing reliance on parallel systems. At a moment when Washington itself confronts fiscal constraints, its capacity to coerce is under strain. Thank you for watching this analysis. If you found it informative, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. We'll continue tracking how this battle between dollars, sanctions, and sovereignty plays out on the world stage.